Emily never did things like this. She wasn't the kind of woman who threw caution to the wind, who let herself get swept away by a moment. But that night, something about him made her forget who she was. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and whiskey as she sat at the hotel bar, nursing her drink. It had been a long day, scratch that, a long week. A breakup, a job hunt, and a string of disappointments had left her drained. She just wanted one night to forget. That's when she saw him. He was tall, effortlessly confident, with dark, tousled hair and piercing blue eyes that held a challenge. The kind of man who knew exactly what he wanted, and tonight, it seemed, that was her. "Rough night?" he asked, sliding onto the stool beside her. She smirked. Something like that. The conversation flowed easily, charged with an undercurrent of something more. His name was Lucas. He was in town on business. He had that smooth, deep voice that sent shivers down her spine, and the way he looked at her made her forget every reason she should say no. One drink turned into two. Two turned into a slow dance in the dimly lit lounge. And before she knew it, she was in his penthouse suite, tangled in silk sheets, losing herself in the heat of the moment. By morning, reality crashed down on her. What had she done? Emily slipped out of bed carefully, gathering her things. Lucas was still asleep, his bare chest rising and falling steadily. He looked peaceful, utterly different from the commanding presence he had last night. She hesitated, just for a second, before turning and walking out the door. This was a mistake. It had to be. Monday morning. Emily took a deep breath as she smoothed down her blouse. First day at a new job. A fresh start. She needed this. Her heart pounded as she stepped into the sleek, glass-walled office of Carter Enterprises. The company was one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country, and landing a job here had been nothing short of a miracle. She was ushered into the conference room for the morning briefing. The team murmured excitedly, waiting for the CEO to arrive. Emily glanced around, eager to make a good impression. Then the door opened, and he walked in. Lucas. Her Lucas.
No.
Not hers. A shiver ran down her spine as their eyes met. He didn't look surprised. No, he looked amused. That same smirk from the bar played at his lips, as if he had been expecting this. "Good morning, everyone," he said smoothly, his gaze lingering on her. "Let's get started." Emily's mind raced. This can't be happening. But it was. Throughout the meeting, she tried to focus, but every time Lucas spoke, every time he moved, flashes of that night came rushing back. The way his hands had explored her body, the way his voice had sent tremors through her. And from the way his gaze kept flicking toward her, dark, knowing, she knew he was thinking the same thing. A dangerous game. The next few days were torture. Lucas was professional, at least in front of the team. But when it was just the two of them, it was a different story. "Miss Carter, could you stay behind for a moment?" His office was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed, watching her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "You left without saying goodbye," he murmured, his voice low and teasing. Emily folded her arms. "I didn't think goodbyes were necessary for mistakes." His smirk deepened. "Is that what you think it was?" She swallowed hard. "It doesn't matter. You're my boss now. That's all this is." He took a step closer. Too close. "Is it?" The air crackled between them. Emily knew she should walk away. She should set boundaries, keep things professional. But the way he was looking at her, like he wanted to unravel her all over again, made her knees weak. This was dangerous. This was reckless. But as he reached out, his fingers barely grazing her wrist, she knew one thing for certain. That night wasn't a mistake. And this was far from over. To be continued,